Children are gifts from God. Even in a sinful and fallen world, children are living proof of God's love and mercy. Adam and Eve's rebellion toward God occurred before they had conceived any children. Nevertheless, God allowed them to fulfill His command to be fruitful and multiply. In those words, God would set in motion a plan of redemption that would include, according to Revelation 7:9, a great multitude of people. Adam and Eve's children embodied the hope that fallen sinners could be redeemed. Adam and Eve recognized children as God's blessing to them. When Cain was born, Eve said, "I've gotten a man from the Lord." Once again, Eve bore a son and said, "For God has appointed me another seed." Even the children of unbelievers are tokens of God's blessings. Genesis 17:20. God has given parents, not school teachers or child care workers, the duty of raising their children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Parents must involve themselves in their children's lives. Deuteronomy 6:6-7 demonstrates just how time-consuming parenting really is. It's not an easy assignment. The difficulty comes when parents fail to follow the simple principles set forth by God. When they neglect their God-given duty, they forfeit the blessing inherent in parenting. Parenting then becomes a burden God never intended for them to bear. Raising children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord does not always guarantee parents will succeed. In Proverbs 22:6, it tells us to train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Is that a promise? That if parents raise their children in the Lord, they will remain faithful? The answer is no. It is not a promise. Look at what it says in verse 4. It says, "The reward of humility and fear of the Lord are riches, honor, and life." Is that a promise? No. Because not everyone who is humble and fears the Lord is rich. Some are poor. Some are persecuted and not honored. Proverbs 22:6 is not a guarantee. The book of Proverbs contains wise sayings, but the wise sayings are not necessarily absolutes. They're not true in every instance. We have all heard stories about children raised in godly homes that later abandoned their faith and grieved their parents. On the other hand, we've heard about godly children whose parents are ungodly. Yes, under godly parents, most children will remain faithful. Parenting by example has to do with what the parent does and not what the child does. The focus and true measure of success is the conduct and character of the parents. By that conduct, a child's character may be shaped and influenced for good or bad. For example, a parent wants their child to be truthful. However, if the child hears mother and father tell lies, the child will learn to tell lies. By their example, parents, however unwittingly, are molding their child's minds, habits, and character. To the level that parents have followed God's plan for parenting, they have succeeded as parents in the eyes of God. Children have an intellect. They don't merely imitate everything that they see and hear. They are thinking beings. They examine and judge what others say and do. They accept or reject those things according to how they've been taught. That's why parents need to be involved in instructing their children. That will go a long way in making sure that others will not influence them more than the parents. For a parent to complain that their son or daughter's failures are the fault of their peers is shifting the blame. The parents themselves are to blame because they have allowed others to influence their children more than they have themselves. Some parents may object, roll their eyes, and insist it's unrealistic to expect them to have more influence than the child's peer group. However, the truth as to why peer groups have influenced children to the degree that they have is because parents are not working at it like God requires. They invest less time in teaching their children. Television, movies, music, the internet, video games, other children have become the main source of their children's spiritual and moral instruction. God has made parenting a full-time job, a full-time responsibility. Some parents talk about spending quality time with their children. That means that they've set aside a number of hours during the week to spend on parenting. Believe me, that guarantees outside influences will have a greater influence than you. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7, it says, "These words which I am commanding today shall be on your heart." Now, something that's on your heart is something that is very important. It continues, "You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house." In other words, when you're at home with your children. "And when you walk by the way," when you're out and about doing things with your children. And finally, "and when you lie down and when you rise up." Everyone is doing one of those two things. They're lying down, reclining comfortably in a chair or bed, or they're rising up and doing things. Deuteronomy describes parenting as a full-time job. When you sit, when you walk by the way, when you lie down and rise up. Remember, just like you, your son and daughter are sinners. And unless a child is instructed in biblical truth, he or she will become a slave to ungodly passions and desires. However, God gives children tender and supple hearts that can be molded. Enlightened by God's Word, children can differentiate between right and wrong. A child can learn to be responsible toward God and neighbor. Support this channel by clicking the subscribe button. It's free. Follow me. And by the way, thanks for watching.